You want to know what it feels like to watch a 12-year-old girl nuke an entire courtroom with one sentence? I'll tell you. She stands up in her Little Miss Perfect dress, looks the judge dead in the eye, and says, "Your Honor, I pick my mom. But the boy in the freezer, he's coming with us, right?" And the whole damn room goes so quiet you can hear some slick lawyer's Botox crack. Now, you're probably thinking, what kind of redneck Jerry Springer nightmare is this? Pull up a chair, sweetheart. My name is Maggie Kowalski, and 3 weeks before that courtroom circus, I bulldozed a $6 million mansion into a pile of toothpicks. On purpose. While cackling like a witch on moonshine. I'm not crazy. I'm just a woman who got pushed exactly 1 inch too far. And I happen to know how to operate heavy machinery. It started on a Tuesday. I was 41 years old, running my own demolition company, Kowalski Crushing, out of Pine River, Michigan. My crew called me Maggie the Mauler because I could knock down a condemned strip mall faster than you could say asbestos. I had calluses on my hands, grease under my nails, and a reputation for being the meanest woman with a backhoe this side of the Huron National Forest. I also had a husband. Jack Worthington. Yeah, that Worthington family. The ones who own half the county and think their crap smells like cinnamon rolls. Jack and I met 15 years ago when he hired me to demolish a rat-infested barn on his daddy's estate. He was the black sheep, the quiet one who became an architect instead of a politician. He wore these nerdy glasses and smiled like he'd never been smiled at before. I was a foul-mouthed welder's daughter who could drive a bulldozer before I could drive a stick shift. We made no sense on paper. But for 12 years, we made perfect sense in real life. Then the accident happened. Our son, Lucas, disappeared on a camping trip up near Pictured Rocks. Search and rescue combed those woods for 9 days. They found his backpack. His jacket. A smear of blood. No body. They declared him dead on a rainy Thursday in October. I broke. Jack shut down. We became 2 ghosts haunting the same drafty farmhouse, passing each other in hallways, never touching, never talking about the boy whose bedroom still smelled like his stupid Axe body spray. Our daughter, Ella, was 7 when it happened. She stopped speaking for 6 months. When she finally started again, all she said was, "Lucas isn't gone, Mommy. He's just cold." I thought it was grief talking. Kids say weird crap when someone dies. I kissed her forehead and told her to eat her mac and cheese. God, I was stupid. Fast forward 5 years. I'm 41, I'd built my demolition business from nothing, and I'm convinced my husband is screwing a redhead named Chelsea who works at his architecture firm. The signs were all there. Late nights at the office. Whispered phone calls he'd take in the garage. A receipt for a $500 dinner at the boathouse, a place he never took me. And then there was the credit card charge for a motel out on Route 37. The Rusty Nail Motor Lodge. Classy. I'm not the kind of woman who cries into her pillow and pretends everything's fine. I'm the kind of woman who loads a 12-gauge with rock salt and asks direct questions. So that Tuesday, I climbed into my pickup, a 1987 Ford F-250 named Bertha, and drove to the Worthington estate. Jack's father, Senator Richard Worthington III, was building a monstrosity of a mansion on the lakefront. 12,000 square feet of marble, glass, and ego. Jack was supposedly the architect on the project. I figured I'd find him there, with Chelsea, playing tonsil hockey in the master suite. I didn't find Jack. I didn't find Chelsea. What I found was a construction foreman named Dale who told me the mansion wasn't even permitted for residential use. "It's zoned commercial, Mags," Dale said, scratching his hard hat. The senator pulled some strings. Whole thing shady as hell. He handed me a folder. "Found this in the site office. Thought you should see it." I opened the folder. Inside were photographs. Grainy surveillance shots of Jack meeting with men I didn't recognize. Documents with the senator's letterhead discussing a containment plan. And a hospital record from 5 years ago. A record with my son's name on it. Dated 3 weeks after he supposedly died. My hand started shaking. Dale, where did you get this? A woman dropped it off yesterday. Redhead. Looked scared as a jackrabbit. Said to give it to you if anything happened to her. What's her name? Chelsea. I stared at that hospital record. The words blurred. Lucas Worthington. Admit date, November 4, 2018. Treating physician, Dr. Alan Cross. Lucas was admitted to some private clinic 3 weeks after he vanished. He was alive. And my husband knew. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I got very, very calm. The kind of calm that precedes a Category 5 hurricane. I walked back to my pickup. I fired up Bertha's diesel engine and listened to that beautiful rumble. Then I drove 3 miles down the road to my equipment yard, hooked up my lowboy trailer, and loaded my pride and joy, a Caterpillar D9 bulldozer I'd nicknamed Wrath of God. It took me 40 minutes to get back to that mansion. The sun was setting over Lake Huron, painting everything gold and pink. Gorgeous, really. Almost ashamed to ruin it. Almost. I lined up Wrath of God 50 yards from the mansion's grand entrance, some gaudy portico with columns stolen straight from a Roman temple. The construction crew scattered like ants when they saw me climb into the cab. Smart boys. I revved the engine, dropped the blade, and punched the throttle. You ever seen a D9 eat a marble column? It's poetry. That blade hit the portico and the whole thing folded like a cheap lawn chair. Chunks of stone flew 50 feet in the air. I kept going. Through the foyer. Through the great room with its imported Italian chandeliers. Through the kitchen that cost more than my entire house. I demolished that mansion room by room, laughing like a hyena, tears streaming down my face, screaming every swear word I'd learned in 41 years of hard living. I was 5 minutes into my rampage when my phone rang. Jack. I almost ignored it. But some twisted part of me wanted him to hear. I answered on speaker. Maggie. What the hell are you doing? Redecorating, you lying son of a bitch. I hollered over the roar of the engine. Hope you kept the receipt for those chandeliers. Maggie, listen to me. It's not what you think. The motel, Chelsea, I can explain. Explain what? That you've been screwing your secretary while I've been home raising our daughter? Or that our son is alive and you didn't tell me? Dead silence on the line. Then, in a voice I'd never heard from him before, small, terrified, Jack whispered, How do you know about Lucas? The blade hit a load-bearing wall. The whole east wing collapsed in a cloud of dust. I cut the engine. What did you say? Maggie, where are you? We need to talk. Face to face. I can explain everything, but not over the phone. My father he's monitoring everything. Please. Just come home. Our home? Or your father's home? Because I'm currently redecorating your father's home and the feng shui is terrible. Maggie, I'm begging you. For Lucas's sake. Please. Something in his voice cracked my fury just enough to let a sliver of doubt seep in. Jack wasn't a liar. He was distant, cold, absent, but he'd never been a liar. And he'd just admitted our son was alive. Fine, I said. I'll come home. But if this is some kind of trick, Jack, I swear to God I'll bulldoze you next. I parked Wrath of God in what used to be the living room, climbed down, and walked through the rubble. My boots crunched on shattered marble. Sirens wailed in the distance. I didn't care. Let them come. I was arrested 20 minutes later. Sheriff Boyd himself cuffed me, an old buddy of the senator's, naturally, and read me my rights with a smirk that said we finally got you, trailer trash. They booked me for felony destruction of property, trespassing, and a half-dozen other charges the senator's lawyers cooked up. Bail was set at $500,000. I spent 3 nights in a county jail cell that smelled like bleach and regret. On day 4, a bondsman I'd never met posted my bail. When I walked out into the sunlight, blinking, my daughter Ella was waiting. 12 years old, all elbows and freckles, holding a manila envelope against her chest like a shield. "Mom," she said. "We need to talk." "Not here. Somewhere safe." We drove to a diner outside of town. Over greasy burgers and chocolate shakes, Ella told me everything she'd been piecing together for months. How she'd found Dad's secret phone hidden in the barn. How she'd cracked his passcode, her birthday, the sap, and read his messages. How there was a woman named Chelsea who wasn't a mistress, but a whistleblower. A woman who worked for the senator and had evidence of something monstrous. "Mom, Dad isn't cheating on you," Ella said, her voice steady as a surgeon's hand. "He's been protecting Lucas from Grandpa." I set down my burger. "Ella, sweetheart, Lucas is dead." "No, he's not." She pulled a phone from the envelope, the secret phone, I realized. Dad's been hiding him. Grandpa wanted Lucas gone because Lucas saw something he shouldn't have. Something about land deals and bribes and, Mom, I don't understand all of it. But Lucas is alive. He's been alive this whole time. She swiped through photos. I saw my son. Older. Thinner. His left arm in a brace. But alive. Sitting in a small room, reading a book. The timestamp was from last week. My heart stopped. Then it restarted, pounding so hard I thought my ribs would crack. "Where is he?" "Dad moved him somewhere new after Chelsea got spooked." "I don't know where. But I know how to find out." She looked at me with those fierce green eyes, my eyes. "The custody hearing is tomorrow. Dad's suing for full custody of me. He says you're unstable." "He's got a point," I muttered, thinking of the mansion. "Mom, focus. The hearing is our chance. We go in there, and we make them tell us everything. But we need leverage." She handed me the envelope. Inside were printed emails, bank statements, and a single photograph that made my blood run cold. A photograph of an industrial freezer unit. The kind used for storing meat. With a small, blurry figure visible through the frosted glass. On the back, in Ella's handwriting, were the words, "Lucas's room. Dad calls it the cold storage solution. I don't think it's as bad as it looks. I hope." I stared at that photo for a long time. "Ella, what exactly are you planning?" She smiled. It wasn't a child's smile. "Tomorrow, when the judge asks me who I want to live with, I'm going to pick you. And then I'm going to ask a question that makes every person in that courtroom crap their pants." "What question?" "You'll see." The next morning, I put on the only decent blouse I owned, and we drove to the Pine River County Courthouse. The Worthington legal team had flown in some hotshot from Detroit. Jack sat at the defendant's table with an expression carved from stone. He wouldn't look at me. The senator wasn't there, but his presence filled the room like cigarette smoke, invisible, choking, everywhere. The proceedings were a blur of legal jargon. Jack's lawyer painted me as a violent lunatic who demolished a landmark project. My public defender, a kid fresh out of law school who looked like she might puke on her shoes, did her best. She argued that I'd been under extreme emotional distress. The hotshot objected so many times I lost count. Judge Holloway, a tired woman with eyes that had seen too much, just waved them on. Then she called Ella to the stand. My daughter walked up there, back straight, chin high. Her brown hair was pulled into a neat ponytail. She wore a simple blue dress that made her look like the only adult in the room. I was so proud I could have burst. The hotshot lawyer asked her a bunch of patronizing questions. "Do you love your mother?" "Yes." "Do you love your father?" "Yes." "Who do you want to live with?" Ella paused. She looked at me. She looked at her father. Jack's jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping in his cheek. Then she said, calm as a lake at dawn, "I love my dad. But I want to live with my mom." Jack flinched like she'd slapped him. The hotshot lawyer smirked. And why is that, young lady? Ella turned to Judge Holloway. Because my mom tells me the truth. My dad hides things. Important things. Dangerous things. A ripple of murmurs went through the courtroom. Jack's face went pale. Judge Holloway leaned forward. What kind of things, Miss Worthington? Ella reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. Your Honor, may I show you something? Proceed. She tapped the screen and held it up. The photo. The freezer unit. The blurry shape behind the fogged glass. Gasps rippled through the gallery like a cold wind. Ella's voice rang out, clear as a bell, with a tremor underneath that only I could hear. I pick my mom. But there's something else the court needs to know. She took a breath. My brother Lucas isn't dead. He's been kept in a freezer for 5 years. And if I go with my dad, I'm afraid I'll end up in one too. The entire room erupted. Judge Holloway's gavel slammed down again and again. Jack shot to his feet, shouting something I couldn't hear over the chaos. The hotshot lawyer looked like a carp that had been smacked with a 2x4. But I wasn't looking at any of them. I was looking at my daughter, holding that phone, her small hands trembling just slightly. And in that moment, I knew 2 things with absolute certainty. 1, my son was alive. 2, I would tear down every building in this county with my bare hands if that's what it took to bring him home. Then the courtroom doors burst open. A woman stumbled in, red hair disheveled, blouse torn, a bruise blooming on her cheekbone. Chelsea. She was clutching a USB drive in her fist like a grenade. Stop the hearing, she screamed. I have proof. Senator Worthington ordered a hit on Lucas, and he's planning to do the same to Maggie and Ella. Right now. Today. The chaos stopped. Everyone froze. I locked eyes with Jack across the room, and for the first time in 5 years, I saw him. Not the cold, distant stranger. But the terrified man who'd been carrying a secret so heavy it had crushed him into silence. He mouthed 2 words, I'm sorry. And that's when my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. 3 words that sent ice water through my veins. There at the yard. Run. My equipment yard. Where my crew was working today. Where my bulldozer was parked. And where, I suddenly realized with sickening clarity, Lucas was probably hidden. I grabbed Ella's hand and bolted for the door. The bailiff lunged forward, shouting something about contempt of court. I didn't give a damn. Chelsea was right behind us, still clutching that USB drive, her heels clacking on the marble floor like gunshots. We burst out of the courthouse into the parking lot. My truck was parked under a dying oak tree, Bertha's rusted fender gleaming in the midday sun. Get in, I barked. Ella dove into the passenger seat. Chelsea scrambled into the back. I cranked the ignition and Bertha roared to life. The courthouse doors flew open behind us. Sheriff Boyd and 2 deputies came charging out, hands on their holsters. I floored it. Gravel sprayed. We tore out of that parking lot doing 60, fishtailing onto Main Street while car horns blared around us. Where exactly is this yard? Chelsea gasped from the back seat. Off County Road 12, I said. 10 miles south of town. You want to tell me what the hell is going on? Chelsea pressed her hand against her bruised cheek. Your father-in-law is not just corrupt, Maggie. He's a monster. I've been working as his personal assistant for 3 years. I've seen things. Things that made me physically sick. What kind of things? Land deals that ruined entire communities. Bribes to state regulators. Kickbacks from developers who bulldozed wetlands and poisoned drinking water. But Lucas was the worst of it. Ella twisted in her seat to face Chelsea. What happened to my brother? Chelsea's eyes welled up. 5 years ago, the senator was finalizing a deal to sell 3,000 acres of state forest to a fracking company. It was illegal as hell. He was supposed to be protecting that land as a nature preserve. Lucas was camping up there with his scout troop. He wandered off from the group and he saw something he shouldn't have. What did he see? I demanded. The senator. Meeting with the CEO of the fracking company. Handing over a briefcase full of cash. Lucas took a picture on his phone. The senator's security team spotted him. They chased him. He fell down a ravine, hit his head. They assumed he was dead and left him there. My knuckles went white on the steering wheel. He wasn't dead, Chelsea continued. A hiker found him the next morning and called an ambulance. Jack was listed as Lucas's emergency contact. The hospital called him. Jack was there in 20 minutes. And he saw immediately what was happening. If the senator found out Lucas was alive, Lucas was dead for real. So Jack made a choice. He hit him, Ella whispered. Chelsea nodded. Jack has an old friend. A doctor who runs a private rehabilitation clinic way up in the Upper Peninsula. No questions asked, no records kept. Lucas was in bad shape, brain swelling, broken bones, internal bleeding. But this doctor saved his life. And Jack kept him hidden. For 5 years. I felt like someone had punched a hole through my chest. Why didn't he tell me? My voice came out ragged. Why didn't he tell me our son was alive? Because the senator was watching everything, Chelsea said. Your phone. Your mail. Your house. Jack knew that if you found out, you'd go straight to the police. And the senator owns the police. You'd have been dead within 48 hours. So would Lucas. So would Ella. I wanted to argue. I wanted to scream that I could have protected us all. But deep down, in a place I didn't want to examine, I knew Jack was right. I would have gone in guns blazing. And we'd all be dead. So what changed? I asked. Why are you here now, with a face that looks like it met a truck bumper? Chelsea touched her bruised cheek. 3 weeks ago, I found out the senator was consolidating his files. He's planning to run for governor next year. He hired a cleaner to eliminate any loose ends. Lucas is the biggest loose end of all. I tried to warn Jack. We set up that motel meeting so I could hand over the evidence I'd gathered. But the senator's men followed me. They roughed me up, told me to keep my mouth shut. Then yesterday, they burned down my apartment. So you decided to testify? I decided to stop being a coward. Chelsea's voice hardened. I've been complicit in this nightmare for 3 years. I stood by while he destroyed lives. I can't do it anymore. That USB drive has everything, bank records, emails, photos, even a recording of the senator ordering the hit on Lucas. I glanced at her in the rearview mirror. You recorded him? I wore a wire for 6 months. The FBI is already waiting for my call. But we have to get Lucas first. Right now, the senator's men are probably already on their way to the yard. Jack hid Lucas in the old refrigeration unit last week after my place got torched. He thought nobody would look there. My blood ran cold. The freezer. The industrial meat freezer at the back of my yard. Chelsea nodded. That's where my son is? Yes. I pressed the accelerator to the floor. Bertha's engine screamed in protest. We blew past a state trooper doing 90 in a 55 zone. I didn't care. Let them chase me. Let them try to stop me. I was going to get my son. Mom, Ella said quietly. What if they're already there? Then God help them, I said. Because I just bulldozed a $6 million mansion. A couple of hired goons are not going to be a problem. We reached County Road 12 in 7 minutes flat. It was a cracked 2-lane blacktop winding through fields of soybeans and abandoned barns. My equipment yard sat at the end of a gravel drive, surrounded by chain-link fencing and a sign that read Kowalski Crushing, we knock it down, you pick it up. The gate was already open. My stomach dropped. I killed the engine and coasted in. No need to announce our arrival. I pulled Bertha behind a stack of rusted I-beams and cut the lights. Both of you stay here, I whispered. Ella, lock the doors. Chelsea, if anything happens, you call 911 and the FBI in that order. Mom, you can't go in there alone. Watch me. I reached under the driver's seat and pulled out my equalizer, a 2-foot-long lug wrench wrapped in duct tape for better grip. Not exactly a SWAT team loadout, but it'd crack a skull just fine. I slipped out of the truck and crouched behind the I-beams. My yard was spread out before me, a familiar landscape of heavy machinery and scrap metal. There was my D9 bulldozer, still crusted with marble dust from the mansion. There was my backhoe, my excavator, my fleet of dump trucks. And in the far corner, the old refrigeration unit. A windowless metal box the size of a shipping container, painted white and humming with the sound of its diesel-powered cooling system. There were 2 black SUVs parked in front of it. Senator Worthington's men. 3 of them, from what I could see. Big guys, suit jackets, earpieces. The kind of muscle you hire when you want things done quiet. One of them was working on the freezer door with a crowbar. The other 2 stood guard, scanning the yard with flat, professional eyes. I needed a plan. I needed backup. I needed a miracle. What I had was a lug wrench and a whole lot of rage. I crept along the row of dump trucks, keeping low. My boots crunched on gravel, but the freezer's diesel motor covered the noise. I was 50 yards away. 40. 30. That's when I heard it. A voice, muffled by metal and insulation, but unmistakably human. Help. Somebody help. Lucas. My knees nearly buckled. 5 years. 5 years of thinking my son was dead, and he was 30 yards away, locked in a freezer, screaming for help. I didn't think. I acted. I stood up, walked straight toward the 3 men, and let out a whistle. Hey, assholes! You're on private property. The 2 guards spun around. The one with the crowbar dropped it, his hand going to his waistband. I kept walking. The lug wrench swung casually at my side. Ma'am, you need to leave, one of them said. This is official Senate business. Official Senate business in my equipment yard? That's cute. Did the senator send you to steal my backhoe? Because I've got paperwork for that. Last warning, lady. Walk away. I was 20 yards away now. Close enough to see the bulge of holsters under their jackets. Close enough to see the sweat beading on their foreheads. You know what's funny? I said. You boys think you're tough. But I've been breaking concrete with my bare hands since before you learned to shave. You want to threaten me on my own land? In front of my own machines? I gestured at the D9 bulldozer looming behind them like a sleeping dinosaur. You see that beauty? Her name is Wrath of God. And let me tell you, she gets real hungry for SUVs. One of the guards smirked. You're insane, lady. Oh, I'm way past insane. I'm a mother who hasn't seen her son in 5 years. The smirk vanished. I charged. The lug wrench connected with the first guard's knee before he could draw his weapon. He went down screaming, his leg bent at an angle God never intended. The second guard lunged at me, but I swung the wrench upward into his jaw. His teeth clicked together with a sound like a pool ball breaking, and he crumpled. The third one, the crowbar guy, got his gun out. I froze. He was young. 25, maybe. His hands were shaking. His eyes were wide, the eyes of someone who'd never actually pointed a gun at a real person before. Drop it, he said. Drop the wrench, or I swear to God I'll shoot. I looked at him. Looked at the gun barrel pointed at my chest. Then I looked past him, at the freezer door. You hear that? I said. What? My son. He's in there. He's been in hiding for 5 years because your boss tried to murder him when he was 9 years old. He saw something he shouldn't have. So the senator sent men like you to chase a 9-year-old boy through the woods until he fell off a cliff. And now here you are, 5 years later, trying to finish the job. The young man's hand shook harder. "You're not a killer," I said. "I can see it in your eyes. You're just some kid who took a job he didn't understand. Put the gun down, and I'll make sure you walk away from this. Keep pointing it at me, and I promise you, you'll spend the rest of your life wishing you hadn't." The gun wavered. "Bobby, shoot her," the guard with the broken jaw gargled from the ground. "Shoot the crazy bitch." Bobby looked at his partner. Looked at me. Looked at the D9 bulldozer. He lowered the gun. "Smart boy," I said. Then I hit him with the lug wrench anyway. Not hard. Just enough to knock him on his ass and send the gun skittering across the gravel. I stepped over the groaning bodies and ran to the freezer door. The crowbar was still wedged in the latch. I grabbed it, put all my weight into it, and the lock snapped with a screech of tortured metal. The door swung open. A blast of cold air hit me. My breath fogged in front of my face. And there, huddled in the corner under a pile of moving blankets, was my son. He was 14 now. He'd been 9 when I last saw him, a scrawny kid with a gap-toothed grin and a superhero backpack. The boy in front of me was taller, thinner, with dark circles under his eyes and a scar running from his temple to his jaw. But those eyes. Those were my eyes. Those were Jack's eyes. "Mom?" His voice cracked. "Mom, is that really you?" I fell to my knees and pulled him into my arms. He was freezing cold, shivering, but alive. Alive. I held him so tight I was probably hurting him, but I couldn't let go. I couldn't. "It's me, baby. It's Mom. I'm here. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." Lucas buried his face in my shoulder and sobbed. I sobbed with him. We stayed like that for what felt like hours, kneeling on the frozen floor of that terrible metal box, while the world outside erupted into sirens and shouting and chaos. Then I heard Ella's voice. "Mom. Mom, the police are here. And Dad's here too." I looked up. Sheriff Boyd's cruisers had pulled into the yard, lights flashing. But standing in front of them, arms spread wide as if he was trying to hold back the tide, was Jack. My husband. The man who had lied to me for 5 years. The man who had let me mourn our son while he secretly visited him in hidden clinics and frozen meat lockers. The man who had sacrificed everything to keep our family alive. He turned and our eyes met. His face was streaked with tears. "Maggie," he called out. "Maggie, I can explain." "You idiot," I shouted back. "You absolute, colossal idiot." He flinched. "Get over here," I said. "Your son needs you." Jack ran. He ran across the gravel, past the groaning thugs, past the freezer door, and he dropped to his knees beside us. He wrapped his arms around both of us, and for the first time in 5 years, our family was together. Not the whole family, Ella was still by the truck, but close. So close. "I'm sorry," Jack kept saying. I'm sorry. "Shut up," I said. "Just shut up and hold him." He did. Sheriff Boyd's voice boomed across the yard. "Jack Worthington. Maggie Kowalski. Step away from the child and put your hands on your heads." I looked up. Boyd had his gun drawn. 4 deputies flanked him, all armed. "Sheriff, you might want to reconsider that order," I called out. "Chelsea. You got that USB drive?" Chelsea emerged from behind the dump trucks, holding the USB drive high like it was the Olympic torch. "Right here. And the FBI is on the line." She held up her phone. The screen showed an active call, the number clearly labeled, FBI Field Office, Detroit. Boyd's face went through several interesting colors. "Now, hold on. Let's all just calm down here." "No, you hold on," Chelsea said. "I've got 3 years of evidence on this drive. Bank fraud. Bribery. Conspiracy to commit murder. And your name is in there." Boyd. Page 43. You took $100,000 to make evidence disappear in the fracking land deal. Boyd's gun hand started to droop. That's a lie, he said. But his voice had gone weak. Then you won't mind waiting for the FBI to sort it out, Chelsea said. They're already on their way. Should be here in about 20 minutes. The deputies exchanged nervous glances. One of them, a young woman with a tight ponytail, lowered her weapon. Then another. Then all of them, until Boyd was standing alone with his gun out, looking like a fool. Sheriff Boyd, I said, standing up and brushing ice crystals off my jeans. You've got two choices. You can put that gun down and wait for the feds like a good little corrupt cop. Or you can try to shoot me, and I'll introduce you to my bulldozer. Your call. Boyd stared at me. He stared at his deputies, who had all backed away. He stared at Chelsea, holding the phone. He stared at the D9 bulldozer, its blade still smeared with dried blood from where I'd knocked those goons senseless. He put the gun down. Good boy, I said. The FBI arrived 18 minutes later. 6 black SUVs and a helicopter. They took Boyd and his deputies into custody, along with the 3 thugs from my yard. Chelsea handed over the USB drive and spent 2 hours giving a statement while paramedics wrapped Lucas in thermal blankets and checked his vitals. He was hypothermic but stable. Malnourished, anemic, and showing signs of long-term psychological trauma. But alive. And free. Jack and I sat in the back of an ambulance, watching the federal agents swarm our equipment yard like ants at a picnic. Ella was curled up next to Lucas, holding his hand, talking to him in a low voice about something that made him almost smile. Maggie, Jack said quietly. I know you're angry. Angry doesn't even begin to cover it. I know. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it up to you. But I need you to understand, I didn't have a choice. My father would have killed you. He told me so, to my face. He said if you ever found out, he'd have you eliminated. He said it the way you'd order a pizza. I looked at him. Really looked. The lines around his eyes. The gray in his hair. The way his shoulders slumped, like he'd been carrying the weight of the world for 5 years and his spine was finally cracking. You should have told me, I said. You should have trusted me. I know. I could have helped. I know that now. But back then, you were falling apart. The grief was eating you alive. I was terrified that if I told you, you'd go straight at my father with a shotgun and he'd bury you before you got within a mile of him. He wasn't wrong. That was exactly what I would have done. We're going to have a lot of conversations about this, I said. A lot of hard ones. And you're going to sleep on the couch for the next decade. But right now, we have bigger problems. Jack nodded. The senator. He's going to run. The feds are already at his estate, but he might have slipped out. Then we go get him. Maggie, we're civilians. We can't just. I cut him off with a look. Jack, I just bulldozed a mansion, wrecked 3 professional thugs with a lug wrench, and unmasked a county-wide corruption ring before lunchtime. I'm not feeling particularly limited by what civilians can and can't do. Jack stared at me for a long moment. Then, for the first time in 5 years, he smiled. It was a small smile, a fragile smile, but it was real. God, I've missed you, he said. Don't get sappy on me yet. We've still got a senator to catch. One of the FBI agents, a tall woman with a severe bun and eyes like a hawk, approached us. Mrs. Kowalski? Mr. Worthington? I'm Special Agent Reyes. We've secured the senator's estate, but there's no sign of him. His private helicopter is missing. We think he's heading for the Canadian border. You need to find him, Jack said. We will. But we've got another problem. Reyes looked at me. Your statement, and your daughter's testimony about the freezer photo, is all over the news. The senator knows he's cornered. Cornered men do desperate things. What are you saying? I'm saying you and your family need protective custody. Right now. We've got a safe house in Traverse City. You'll stay there until we apprehend the senator. I shook my head. No. Mrs. Kowalski, this isn't optional. Listen, Agent Reyes. I appreciate the offer. I really do. But I've spent 5 years not knowing my son was alive. I've spent 5 years thinking I'd failed him. Now I know the truth. And the man who tried to murder my son is out there, running for the border like the coward he is. I stood up and brushed the gravel off my jeans. I'm not hiding in some safe house while that snake slithers away to Canada. He tried to kill my boy. He tried to kill my husband. He would have killed my daughter. Nobody does that to my family and walks away. Agent Reyes looked at me with something that might have been respect. What do you propose? You said his helicopter is heading for the border. How long before he crosses? At current speed, about 90 minutes. We've got air support scrambling from Selfridge, but they won't intercept in time. What about ground access? Is there a road to wherever he's landing? Reyes pulled up a map on her tablet. There's an old logging road that cuts through the state forest. It connects to a private airstrip about 10 miles south of Sault Ste. Marie. If he's going to cross, that's where he'll refuel. I looked at the map. Looked at the twisting line of the logging road. Looked at my yard, where the D9 bulldozer sat waiting. Agent Reyes, I said. How do you feel about creative problem solving? She raised an eyebrow. Define creative. You want to intercept a helicopter with no air support and no time. I want to see justice done. I happen to know that logging road. I've cleared timber up there. And I've got a machine that can block that airstrip in about 15 minutes. Reyes stared at me. You want to use a bulldozer to stop a helicopter. I want to use a bulldozer to make sure a murderer doesn't escape justice. The helicopter part is just a bonus. She was silent for a long moment. Then she said, I didn't hear any of this. Officially. But if a civilian happened to be in the area, operating heavy machinery legally on land she had permission to be on, and that machinery accidentally obstructed a private airstrip, well. Accidents happen. I grinned. Agent Reyes, I think we're going to get along. She walked away, barking orders into her radio. I turned to Jack. Stay with the kids. Keep them safe. Maggie, you can't seriously be planning to. Jack. I put my hand on his chest. For 5 years, you've been the one protecting this family. You did it alone. You did it scared. You did it with the whole world against you. Now it's my turn. He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. He knew that look in my eye. He'd seen it before, back when we were young and reckless and thought we could take on the world together. Just come back, he said. I always do. I kissed him. It was the first real kiss we'd shared in 5 years. It tasted like tears and diesel fuel and hope. Then I climbed into the cab of my D9 bulldozer, fired up the engine, and headed north. The logging road was exactly as I remembered it, rutted, overgrown, and treacherous as hell. Bertha would have bounced apart after the first mile, but the D9 bulldozer ate up that terrain like it was a freshly paved highway. I pushed the throttle to maximum, the massive tracks chewing through mud and brush, the blade leveled like a battering ram. 45 minutes later, I burst out of the tree line and saw it. The private airstrip. A narrow strip of cracked asphalt carved into the forest, with a single fuel pump and a windsock flapping in the breeze. And descending from the gray Michigan sky, the senator's helicopter. A sleek black Bell 429 with gold trim, because of course the bastard had gold trim. I didn't hesitate. I angled the D9 toward the center of the runway and dropped the blade. The steel edge bit into the asphalt, ripping up chunks of pavement and piling them into a 3-foot-high berm right across the middle of the strip. The helicopter was maybe 200 feet up and descending fast. I could see the pilot's face through the cockpit glass, his eyes going wide as he realized what was happening. The helicopter wobbled, tried to pull up, tried to veer away, but it was too low, too committed to the landing. I killed the bulldozer's engine and climbed out of the cab. The helicopter hovered for a moment, rotors thundering, then slowly touched down at the far end of the runway. The door slid open. Senator Richard Worthington III stepped out. He was a tall man, silver-haired, with a face that had been handsome once and was now just hard. He wore a $10,000 suit and a look of cold fury. "Margaret," he said. "I should have known." "Richard." I walked toward him, stopping about 20 yards away. "Going somewhere?" "Canada doesn't have an extradition treaty for certain types of charges. I have lawyers already working on it." "Of course you do." He looked at the berm of rubble blocking the runway. Looked at the D9 bulldozer. Looked at me. "You've been a thorn in my side for 15 years, he said. "From the moment my son brought you home, I knew you'd be trouble. A welder's daughter from the wrong side of the tracks, with dirt under her nails and no respect for her betters. Yeah, well. You tried to murder my son. So I guess we're even on the disappointment front." His jaw tightened. Lucas was an accident. An unfortunate accident. If he'd just kept his mouth shut, none of this would have happened. He was 9 years old. He was a liability. And now, thanks to your meddling, my entire legacy is in ruins. He reached into his jacket. "But I'm not going to prison, Margaret. I'd rather die than let those federal jackals put me in a cage." I tensed. But what he pulled out wasn't a gun. It was a phone. "I have one call left to make," he said. "One call, and everything you love goes up in flames." "You're bluffing." "Am I?" He pressed a button on the phone. "The safe house in Traverse City? The one where my idiot son thinks he's protecting your children? My men have been watching it for hours. One word from me, and they'll level the place." My blood went cold. "The FBI is with them." "The FBI is spread thin. They sent 2 agents. 2. I have 6 men. Do the math." He held up the phone, his thumb hovering over the call button. "Let me take off, and your family lives. Try to stop me, Anne." He never finished the sentence. Because in that moment, the sky filled with a sound that made my heart soar. Rotors. Not one helicopter. 6. FBI helicopters, black and sleek, roaring over the treetops with searchlights blazing. And behind them, racing up the logging road with sirens wailing, a convoy of black SUVs. I smiled. "You were saying?" The senator stared at the approaching fleet. His face went through several fascinating expressions: disbelief, rage, and finally, defeat. His hand dropped. The phone clattered to the asphalt. "It's over, Richard," I said. "You've lost." He looked at me, and for just a moment, I saw something human in his eyes. Something tired. Something broken. "You know," he said quietly, "I actually did love this state. Once. Before the money got involved. Before the power. Then you should have done right by it." The FBI agents swarmed the runway, guns drawn, shouting orders. The senator put his hands on his head and knelt on the asphalt without being asked. Maybe he was too tired to fight. Maybe he'd finally realized what he'd become. I didn't care. I was already walking back to my bulldozer. 2 days later, the story was all over the national news. Senator Worthington arrested for conspiracy, bribery, attempted murder, the list went on and on. Sheriff Boyd and half the county commission were indicted. The fracking company pulled out of Michigan entirely, facing a $1 billion lawsuit. Chelsea was hailed as a hero, her face on every magazine cover, her USB drive Exhibit A in what the papers were calling the Pine River Conspiracy. As for my family, we were a mess. But we were a mess together. Lucas spent 2 weeks in the hospital. The doctors said he'd recover physically, but the psychological scars would take years. Maybe a lifetime. Jack and I started marriage counseling. We fought. We cried. We fought some more. But slowly, painfully, we started to find our way back to each other. Ella was the real hero of the whole thing. That girl had more guts than a slaughterhouse. She'd pieced together the truth from scraps of overheard conversations and stolen phone glances, and she'd walked into that courtroom knowing exactly what she was doing. I told her I was proud of her about 100 times a day. She told me to stop being embarrassing. Standard 12-year-old stuff. The custody hearing was dismissed, obviously. The charges against me for the mansion incident were quietly dropped, partly because the prosecutor was one of the people indicted, and partly because, as Agent Reyes put it, nobody wants to explain to a jury why they're prosecuting a mother for property damage when the property owner tried to murder her child. And the mansion? The senator's insurance company refused to pay out, citing acts of justified rage or something close to it. The ruins are still there, a pile of marble and broken glass on the shore of Lake Huron. I drive past it sometimes. It makes me smile every damn time. 3 months after the courthouse chaos, we held a party at my equipment yard. Everyone came, my crew, Chelsea, Agent Reyes, even some of the deputies who'd switched sides after the indictment. We grilled burgers on a barrel smoker and drank cheap beer and watched the sunset paint the sky over the treetops. Lucas was there, sitting in a lawn chair, wrapped in blankets even though it was June. He still got cold easily. He smiled sometimes now. It was a shy smile, a cautious smile, but it was real. Ella was teaching Chelsea how to operate the backhoe. Agent Reyes was laughing so hard at something my foreman Dale said that beer came out of her nose. And Jack was standing beside me, his arm around my shoulders, looking at our family with an expression of quiet wonder. "What are you thinking about?" I asked him. "Honestly?" "About how I married a lunatic who bulldozes mansions and chases down senators with heavy machinery. And it's the best decision I ever made." I leaned into him. "Damn right it is." Lucas called out from his chair. "Mom, Dad, stop being gross." "Never," I said. And for the first time in 5 years, I meant it. The sun went down. The stars came out. Someone fired up the D9 bulldozer and used the blade to crack open a piñata. Don't ask, it was Dale's idea, and we all laughed until our ribs ached. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. Fairy tales are clean and neat and tied up with ribbon. This was messy. This was scarred. This was held together with duct tape, determination, and sheer stubborn love. But it was ours. And that was enough. 3 months later, I got a call that changed everything. It was a Tuesday. Again. Tuesdays seemed to be the day my life liked to flip itself upside down and shake out all the loose change. I was at the yard, supervising my crew as they prepped an old textile mill for demolition. Business was booming. Turns out, when you bulldoze a corrupt senator's mansion on live television, people remember your company's name. Kowalski Crushing had more contracts than we could handle. I'd hired 6 new guys and was training my foreman Dale to run the office. I was even thinking about buying a second D9, maybe naming her Merciful Justice. Then my phone buzzed. "Agent Reyes." "Maggie, you sitting down?" "I'm operating heavy machinery." Sitting down is kind of the job description. "The senator's trial. It's over." I killed the engine and pulled off my hard hat. "How over?" "Guilty on all counts. Conspiracy to commit murder. Bribery. Fraud. Money laundering. Obstruction of justice." The jury deliberated for 45 minutes. The judge handed down 4 consecutive life sentences without possibility of parole. I let that sink in. 4 life sentences. Richard Worthington III, the man who had terrorized my family for 5 years, who had tried to murder my son, who had burned down Chelsea's apartment and sent thugs after my husband, was going to die in a federal prison cell. "Good," I said. "What about Boyd?" Sheriff Boyd pled out. 10 years for conspiracy and accepting bribes. 4 of his deputies got probation in exchange for testimony. The fracking company paid $200 million in fines and restitution. Their CEO is facing separate charges. And Chelsea? Chelsea is in witness protection, at her own request. She's starting over somewhere warm. I can't tell you where. But she asked me to tell you something. What's that? She said, tell Maggie I finally learned what courage looks like. It looks like a crazy woman with a lug wrench. I laughed. I couldn't help it. She's not wrong. Maggie, there's one more thing. Reyes's voice got serious. The senator's lawyers filed an appeal this morning. It'll take years, but they're arguing that his civil rights were violated because a civilian, that would be you, interfered with his arrest. Are you kidding me? I saved his life. If I hadn't blocked that runway, your agents would have shot him out of the sky. I know that. You know that. But his lawyers are going to drag this out as long as they can. And they're going to try to paint you as a violent vigilante who took the law into her own hands. I thought about that. Then I looked at my bulldozer, still wearing its chipped paint and battle scars. I thought about the mansion. I thought about the freezer. I thought about my son's face when I opened that door. Let them, I said. Excuse me? Let them paint me however they want. I don't care. I've got my son back. I've got my husband back. I've got a daughter who's going to be president someday. Richard Worthington can rot in his cell and file all the appeals he wants. He's never getting out. That's all that matters. Reyes was quiet for a moment. You know, for a demolition contractor, you're surprisingly wise. I'm not wise. I'm just too busy to care about a dead man's paperwork. We said our goodbyes and I climbed down from the bulldozer. Dale was walking toward me with a clipboard and a worried expression. Boss, we got a problem with the mill job. The city inspector says we need an environmental impact study before we can drop the smokestack. That's gonna take 6 weeks, minimum. I took the clipboard and glanced at it. Call the inspector. Tell him if he wants an environmental impact study, I'll be happy to conduct one personally. I'll start by measuring the impact of a D9 bulldozer on his office building. Dale stared at me. You're joking, right? Mostly. But mention the bulldozer anyway. It's good for morale. He shook his head, grinning. You're a menace, Megs. Damn right I am. I left the yard early that day and drove home. Not to the drafty farmhouse where Jack and I had spent 5 years haunting each other like ghosts. We'd sold that place 2 months ago, used the money to buy a new house on 10 acres of land outside town. It was a fixer-upper, peeling paint, sagging porch, a barn that looked like it might collapse in a stiff breeze, but it was ours. No Worthington money. No senator's shadow. Just us. Jack was in the driveway when I pulled up, his truck loaded with lumber and drywall. He'd quit his architecture firm the day after his father's arrest. Now he was working with me, designing sustainable low-income housing while I handled the demolition side. We were calling the new venture Phoenix Development. Corny, I know. But after everything that burned down, rising from the ashes felt right. Hey, beautiful. He wiped sawdust off his glasses. How was work? The senator got 4 life sentences. Jack paused. His face did something complicated, relief, grief, anger, all swirling together. Richard Worthington was a monster, but he was still Jack's father. That kind of wound doesn't heal overnight. How do you feel? I asked. Honestly? I don't know. He set down the lumber. Part of me wants to celebrate. Part of me remembers the man he used to be, before the money and the power. He wasn't always evil. I know. When I was a kid, he used to take me fishing. Just the 2 of us. He'd pack sandwiches and we'd sit on the dock for hours, not even talking. Just being together. Jack's voice cracked. What happened to that man? I pulled him into a hug. He buried his face in my shoulder, and I felt his shoulders shake. I didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. Some griefs don't need words. After a while, he pulled back and wiped his eyes. Sorry. Don't apologize. You're allowed to grieve. He was your father. The good version of him, anyway. The good version died a long time ago. Maybe he was never real. Maybe I just imagined him. Hey. I put my hand on his cheek. You're not your father. You never were. You spent 5 years protecting our son from him. You sacrificed everything. You are the best man I know. Jack smiled, shaky but real. I love you, Maggie. I love you too, you big sap. Now help me unload this drywall before your daughter gets home and makes fun of us for being slow. We worked until sunset, hauling lumber and drywall into the barn. The renovation was going slow, we were both working full-time, and weekends were reserved for family therapy and Lucas's medical appointments. But slow was okay. Slow meant steady. Slow meant real. Ella got home at 6, dropped off by the school bus. She'd joined the debate team and was already their star. The coach said she'd never seen a 12-year-old argue with such conviction. I can't imagine where she got that from. Mom. Dad. I'm home. She burst through the door, backpack swinging. We won our first debate. The topic was, should whistleblowers receive immunity, and I destroyed them. That's my girl, I said, pulling her into a hug. Did you use the freezer photo? Mom. That would be a logical fallacy. I used the transcript of Chelsea's FBI testimony instead. Much more legally credible. She grinned. Also, I may have mentioned that my mom bulldozed a mansion and became a folk hero. That wasn't strictly relevant, but the judges loved it. Jack laughed. You're going to be insufferable when you're a lawyer, aren't you? I prefer formidable. We were still laughing when the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find a man I didn't recognize standing on the porch. He was maybe 60, with silver hair and a weathered face. He wore a rumpled suit that looked like it had been slept in. In his hands, he held a leather briefcase. Mrs. Kowalski? His voice was hoarse, uncertain. That's me. Can I help you? My name is Dr. Alan Cross. He paused, as if the name should mean something. I'm the doctor who treated your son. For 5 years. The laughter died in my throat. Dr. Cross. I stepped back, my hand tightening on the doorframe. Jack told me about you. You're the one who ran the private clinic. The one who saved Lucas's life. I did. And now I need your help. Behind me, Jack appeared. He went pale when he saw the doctor. Alan? What are you doing here? Is everything okay? Is Lucas? Lucas is fine. He's at his physical therapy appointment, correct? Dr. Cross shifted his weight nervously. This isn't about Lucas. It's about the other children. I felt a chill run down my spine. What other children? Dr. Cross opened his briefcase. Inside were dozens of files, thick with medical records. He pulled one out and handed it to me. When Jack came to me 5 years ago, I thought it was a one-time thing. A favor for an old friend. Hide one boy, save one life. He took a shaky breath. But then there were others. Parents who'd crossed the senator. Witnesses who'd seen too much. Children of people who'd refused to sell their land. Richard Worthington didn't just try to kill your son, Mrs. Kowalski. He systematically eliminated anyone who threatened his power. And when he couldn't kill them outright, he made them disappear. I opened the file. Staring back at me was a photograph of a girl, maybe 10 years old, with dark hair and frightened eyes. The file was labeled, Subject 7. Disappeared 2019. Current status, unknown. 7 children, Dr. Cross said. 7 children that I know of, hidden across the state in clinics and basements and storage units. Some are still alive. I don't know about the others. But the senator kept records. Detailed records. And now that he's convicted, those records are going to be destroyed by his remaining associates, unless someone stops them. Jack stepped forward. Alan, why didn't you tell me this before? Because I was afraid. We were all afraid. The senator had eyes everywhere. But now he's going to prison. His network is crumbling. This might be our only chance to find those children before they're lost forever. I stared at the photograph of Subject 7. A 10-year-old girl with dark hair and frightened eyes. Someone's daughter. Someone's sister. Someone who'd been stolen from her family just like Lucas had been stolen from me. How many are still alive? I asked. I believe at least 4. Possibly 5. The records indicate locations, but they're coded. I've been trying to decipher them for weeks. I need help. I need resources. You need a woman with a bulldozer, I said. Dr. Cross blinked. I'm sorry? I handed the file back to him and turned to face my family. Jack was already reaching for his coat. Ella was pulling up a map on her phone, her debate team brain already analyzing the logistics. And Lucas had come home from therapy without me noticing. He was standing in the doorway, his face pale but determined. Mom, he said. We have to help them. I know what it's like to be trapped in the cold. Nobody should have to go through that. Nobody. I looked at my son. My brave, scarred, miraculous son. The boy who'd survived 5 years in hiding and still had room in his heart for strangers. All right, I said. Dr. Cross, you just hired Kowalski Crushing. Our going rate for rescuing kidnapped children is $0 and all the coffee you can drink. Let's get to work. What followed was the most intense 3 months of my life. Dr. Cross's coded records led us to a network of hidden locations scattered across northern Michigan. Abandoned cabins, disused hunting blinds, even a decommissioned lighthouse on the Lake Superior shore. Each location was guarded, not by armed thugs, but by bureaucracy and isolation and fear. The children had been told their families were dead. They'd been told nobody was looking for them. They'd been told the outside world was dangerous and they were safer staying hidden. We proved them wrong. One by one. Subject 7 was the first. Her real name was Maria Alvarez. She'd been taken 3 years ago after her father, a journalist, published an exposé on the senator's land deals. She was being held in a basement apartment in a rundown neighborhood in Saginaw. The couple guarding her were an elderly man and woman who'd been paid to keep her fed and quiet. They didn't resist when we showed up with the FBI. They seemed relieved. Maria's mother had died of cancer 2 years ago, believing her daughter was dead. Her father was still alive, still writing, still fighting. When he saw his daughter walk off that FBI plane, he collapsed on the tarmac, sobbing. I stood there with tears streaming down my face, thinking about my own reunion with Lucas. This was what it felt like. This was what justice looked like. Subject 12 was a boy named Tyrell Washington. He'd been 9 when he witnessed a bribery exchange between the senator and a city council member. He was 12 now, hidden in a group home under a false name. His mother had been told he'd run away. She'd spent 3 years searching for him, putting up flyers, begging for information. The day we brought Tyrell home, his mother fainted. Just dropped right there on the sidewalk. When she came to, she held her son so tight I thought she'd crack his ribs. Subject 3 was the hardest. Her name was Emily Chen. She'd been 11 when the senator's men came for her family. Her crime? Her father was an environmental scientist who'd discovered the fracking company was poisoning the water table. The senator had him killed in a hunting accident. Emily was taken the same night. She was 16 now, 5 years in captivity, shuffled between locations so many times she'd lost count. We found her in the lighthouse. Not a real lighthouse, that had been decommissioned years ago. But a mock-up built on a private island, designed to look abandoned but secretly fitted with living quarters. She was the only child there. She'd been alone for almost a year, surviving on food deliveries dropped off by a boat that came once a month. When we broke in, she attacked us with a kitchen knife. It took 3 agents to restrain her. She was feral, wild-eyed, screaming in a language that wasn't English or any other recognizable tongue. She'd invented her own words. Her own way of surviving. It took 6 hours to calm her down. 6 hours of sitting on the floor, talking softly, showing her photographs of her mother, still alive, still searching, still hoping. Finally, Emily blinked. Her eyes focused. She looked at the photograph, then at me, and whispered a single word. "Mama?" "Yeah, sweetheart." I was crying. Again. I seem to be doing a lot of that lately. "We're taking you to your mama." Her mother lived in Oregon now, having fled Michigan after her husband's accident. She'd spent 5 years in a fog of grief and fear, convinced her daughter was dead. When the FBI called her, she didn't believe them. It took a video call, Emily's face on the screen, before she finally broke down. The reunion happened at the Portland airport. I wasn't there to see it, but Agent Reyes sent me a photo. Mother and daughter, holding each other, both of them crying, both of them alive. I keep that photo on my phone. It reminds me why we do this. The other subjects were harder to find. Subject 2 had died 2 years ago from an untreated respiratory infection. Subject 5 was never located, the records were too fragmented, the trail too cold. Dr. Cross believes there may be others beyond the original 7, children the senator had erased so completely that no record of them exists anywhere. That's the part that keeps me up at night. The ones we couldn't save. The ones whose names we'll never know. But 4 children came home. 4 families were made whole. 4 lives that Richard Worthington tried to destroy were pieced back together, jagged and fragile, but alive. And every time I doubt whether we made a difference, I look at that photo of Emily and her mother. I remember the weight of the lug wrench in my hand. I remember the taste of diesel smoke and the rumble of the D9 engine. And I think, this is what I was made for. The media coverage was intense. For weeks, our faces were everywhere. The Demolition Crusader, they called me. Michigan's real-life superhero. I did interviews with Good Morning America and the New York Times. I was invited to speak at conferences and charity galas. People wanted me to run for office, can you imagine? Maggie Kowalski, county commissioner. I'd rather wrestle a backhoe. I turned down most of it. I'm not a crusader. I'm not a hero. I'm just a woman who refuses to let bullies win. And I've got a family to take care of. Speaking of which, the kids are doing okay. Lucas is in high school now. He's got a therapist he trusts, a group of friends who don't care about his scars, and a growing obsession with photography. He says he wants to be a photojournalist, to tell stories that matter, to shine a light on injustice. Jack cried when he heard that. So did I. Ella is 14 and terrifying. She's already taking college-level debate classes. She started a true crime podcast about the Pine River conspiracy that got 1 million downloads in its first month. She's currently lobbying the school board to add a whistleblower protection curriculum to the civics program. I'm pretty sure she's going to be president someday. God help the opposition. Jack and I are still in therapy. Still working on it. Some days are good. Some days we fight about stupid things, dishes, laundry, who forgot to pay the electric bill. Normal things. Married things. The things we never got to fight about during those 5 years of silence. But at night, when the house is quiet, we sit on the porch and watch the stars. We don't talk much. We don't need to. We're just 2 people who walked through hell and came out the other side, still holding hands. Still together. Still in love. Dr. Cross went back to his clinic, but he's working with the state now, designing a program to locate and rescue victims of political corruption. He named it Project Lucas. Lucas is embarrassed by this. I think it's perfect. Chelsea sends postcards from wherever she is. Beach scenes. Mountain vistas. Once, a picture of a bulldozer with a smiley face drawn on the blade. She never signs her real name, but I know her handwriting. I'm glad she's safe. I'm glad she's free. Agent Reyes got a promotion. She's now the head of the FBI's anti-corruption task force for the entire Midwest. She still calls me sometimes, asking for advice on cases. I tell her the same thing every time: follow the money. And if that doesn't work, follow the bulldozers. The senator died 6 months into his sentence. A heart attack in his cell. The media called it a fitting end. I called it anticlimactic. Part of me had wanted him to suffer for decades, to rot slowly, to feel every ounce of pain he'd inflicted on those children. But another part of me, the part that's been through enough therapy to know better, was just relieved. He's gone. He can't hurt anyone else. That's enough. 1 year after the courthouse chaos, we held a reunion. Not just a party. A real reunion. All 4 rescued children came, with their families. Maria brought her father, who's writing a book about the conspiracy. Tyrell brought his mother, who hasn't stopped hugging him for 6 months straight. Emily brought her mother, who moved back to Michigan to be closer to the people who saved her daughter. And Lucas, of course, was the host. We held it at our new house. The renovation was finally finished. The sagging porch was now a sturdy wraparound deck. The collapsing barn was now a workshop where Jack and Lucas built furniture together. The peeling paint was gone, replaced by a fresh coat of blue, the color of the sky on the day Lucas came home. The kids played together in the yard. Maria and Tyrell taught Emily how to throw a frisbee. Lucas took photographs of everything, his camera clicking nonstop. The adults sat on the deck, drinking lemonade and swapping stories about the nightmare we'd all survived. At sunset, I stood up and clinked my glass. Can I have everyone's attention? The chatter died down. All eyes turned to me. I'm not good at speeches. I'm better at swinging lug wrenches. But I wanted to say something. I looked at the children, the survivors, sitting cross-legged on the grass. 5 years ago, I thought my son was dead. I thought my life was over. I thought the world was a cold, cruel place where the powerful crushed the weak and nobody ever faced justice. I paused. Swallowed the lump in my throat. But I was wrong. The world is cold and cruel sometimes. But it's also full of people who refuse to give up. People who hide children from monsters. People who wear wires for 6 months to gather evidence. People who walk into courtrooms holding photographs and tell the truth, no matter how scared they are. I looked at Ella. She was beaming, tears streaming down her face. We're not superheroes. We're not crusaders. We're just people who decided that the way things were wasn't good enough. And we did something about it. That's all any of us can do. Find the thing that makes you angry. Find the thing that breaks your heart. And then find a way to fight back. I raised my glass. To the survivors. To the fighters. To family, however you define it. And to bulldozers, may we always have the courage to use them when necessary. Everyone laughed. Everyone cheered. Jack pulled me into a kiss that tasted like lemonade and tears and hope. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, I walked out to the barn. My D9 bulldozer was parked there, cleaned and polished, its blade gleaming in the moonlight. I climbed into the cab and sat there for a while, running my hands over the controls. She'd been through a lot, this machine. She'd demolished a mansion. She'd blocked a runway. She'd become a symbol of something bigger than either of us. People still drove past our property sometimes, hoping to catch a glimpse of the famous bulldozer. Kids left flowers and thank you notes on the blade. I reached under the seat and pulled out my lug wrench. Still wrapped in duct tape. still dented from where I'd cracked those thugs' knees. I held it in my hands and thought about everything that had happened. The grief. The rage. The truth. The rescue. The reunion. Then I climbed down, walked to the tool bench, and hung the lug wrench on a hook above my work table. I wasn't retiring it, you never know when you'll need a good lug wrench, but I was putting it away. For now. For as long as peace lasted. Peace didn't last long, of course. It never does. 3 weeks later, I got another call from Agent Reyes. Maggie, you sitting down? Reyes, we've been through this. If you're calling me, I'm always sitting down. What's going on? We found another child. Subject 5. The one whose records were too fragmented to trace. My heart lurched. Alive? Alive. But there's a complication. She's being held on a private island in Lake Michigan. Owned by an offshore shell company linked to the senator's remaining associates. We can't get a warrant, the jurisdictional issues are a nightmare. The island is technically in international waters. International waters? It's Lake Michigan. You can see Wisconsin from there. The legal designation is complicated. The point is, our hands are tied. Officially. I caught her tone. Unofficially? Unofficially, I might know a demolition contractor who owns a barge. And that barge might be capable of carrying a D9 bulldozer. And that contractor might have a personal interest in rescuing one last child. I was already reaching for my keys. Reyes, send me the coordinates. And tell Subject 5 to hang tight. The child's name is Hope. She's 8 years old. Hope, I repeated. Then let's go bring her home. I fired up Bertha's engine. The rumble was like music. Somewhere in the barn, Wrath of God sat waiting, her blade sharp and her engine ready. Outside, the sun was rising over the Michigan treetops, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Some people never learn. Some battles never end. Some children are still out there, waiting to be found. But that's okay. I've got a bulldozer, a lug wrench, and a family that knows how to fight. Let's get to work.